Quran is a massive part, but you know what? Charity is also a really big part of Ramadan.
Yeah, that's
You'll notice, mashallah, I'll say, people become very charitable in this month.
Stomachs are empty, my friend. That's why.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to our Muslimah Roundtable podcast. Today we'll be speaking about the ultimate guide to Ramadan, and we'll be discussing a few tips on how to better our month, inshallah. I think everyone should sit down and just contemplate how beautiful this month is and the mercy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings in this month. As soon as we speak about Ramadan, we're faffing around with, we need to do the extra cooking, we need to do the extra cleaning,
Need to prep the samosas, need to get the rolls in.
But we don't even sit for, a few minutes and just think that how beautiful this month is. And it's just like, having that excitement. If you don't have that excitement, there's something definitely wrong with you.
You're right. You know what? The excitement's a bit like, when you've got like a family wedding.
Yeah.
And you're so excited and we prepare for like months and months in advance.
Yeah. And then it's finally here.
Yeah. And that's kind of the same sort of theory we're supposed to follow, where when Ramadan is coming, we're supposed to be prepping well beforehand.
Yeah.
Not like a couple of days. And not just going to the grocery store and picking up them rolls, or sitting as a family and say, you know what, let's spend a full day making samosas. This is how we're going to prep for Ramadan. There's more to it, isn't there?
Definitely. And there's so many people who I've spoken to, or people ask me, have you done your Eid shopping? And it's just like, that's not the first thing on my agenda. You know what I mean? Or anything for that matter. Or you'll be seeing people running for extra shopping, stocking like as if, there's going to be a tsunami soon and everything's going to end. It's like, what?
But inshallah, that's what we want to speak about, isn't it, really? About how to prepare for Ramadan. What's the ultimate guide? I know I have some of my own goals and aspirations that I want to achieve in Ramadan. And I mean, you mentioned before about Ramadan being like a guest.
Yeah.
And how
that excitement.
Excitement
of that something's coming. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us something.
Yeah.
And that's how we should see it. I've heard a few people say, or basically they see it as a form of like restriction, like, we need to quickly eat this, or we need to go to these outings, these
I need
restaurants.
To eat as many burgers and cheese before.
We need to go to all these restaurants beforehand, or we need to meet our friends beforehand. It becomes like a burden on them instead of something to look forward to.
But inshallah, we want to change that mindset.
Yeah,
because I think we've all been there, done that, and alhamdulillah, we do have more knowledge available now, and that's partly the reason why we do this podcast. To, inshallah, bring about knowledge to more of a wider audience. And it's easy for us at a click of a finger. We can listen and we can learn something. For me personally, I mean, Ramadan is that month, like you mentioned before, Allah's mercy descends in this month, and the good deeds are multiplied, and from that we understand how merciful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And I think one of the things which I love the most about this month is how it brings everyone together. Like if you notice on a normal day, if you're organizing an event, getting all your family together is so difficult.
Hard, yeah, definitely.
Or one person can't make it because they're busy, they're stuck at work. One person has something else going on. But Ramadan is that 1 month where everybody unites, everybody gets together. Everyone's.
Tell you why the main reason for that is not. I'm only joking, but the main reason is the majority of the women are so happy they don't need to cook, so they'll be there before you've even booked them in.
I know, that's true. Yeah, if you're getting an invite, then I suppose. So I mean, like, it brings us together. We are having a laugh and a joke about iftaris, but there is obviously more. There is a lot more to it. That is one of the blessings you can say, that we all get together at that point. And one thing I think this month does teach us as well is how truly disciplined we are when it comes to our deen, when it comes to our worship, when it comes to
structure.
When it comes to like how close or distant are we to our deen. Because we all think, well, we read our namazes, we're doing good. Well, how disciplined are we? How much practice, have we attained throughout the years between the last Ramadan and this Ramadan? What have we achieved? So it's a really good time for us to reflect upon ourselves. And the best thing about Ramadan is that everybody else is in the same mindset. Usually everyone's working, they're busy. Ramadan is that time where we all have the same kind of focus, where we all want to be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we all want to increase our good deeds. So I think that's one great positivity. You can feel it in the air.
You can, of course.
There's
a different essence in there.
And I think the fact that shaitan's locked away is another blessing that he's chained up. So definitely you can feel the goodness in the air. And you'll notice as well, like, no Ramadan is ever the same as the previous Ramadan that you've experienced. It's usually always slightly different.
Yeah.
Like, I'll give you example, you know, like when people go to Hajj and you meet somebody who's been to Hajj, or you might have met a few people, and you listen to their stories, and they'll tell you things like, oh, you know, when I went to Hajj, I experienced this, or I went through this difficulty. And then you'll talk to somebody else about their Hajj experience, and it'll be totally different. But yet they've both done the same Hajj, they've both performed the same rituals, but their journey was totally different.
Definitely.
And you can say when we're fasting in our Ramadan, we are doing this similar, we're following the same legal rulings, but our journey is different.
It's different, yeah.
And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, He gives us rewards, you know, personally, as in, we don't know that, okay, if we keep this many fasts, we'll get this reward. It's not like that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so personal towards each believer that He rewards that person individually according to their fast, because only you know what you struggled with, what you found difficult, how you exhausted yourself in like something.
It's just between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your struggles are between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Definitely. And I mean, what matters the most when it comes to Ramadan is that we start off by making sincere intentions, and we devote ourselves fully to this month. And we sort of clear our mindset as well, you know, clear away any negative thoughts, and sort of try and go into the month with a positive mindset, what we're going to achieve. And at the same time, we want to end this month attaining a positive change, you know, within ourselves. We want to take something away from Ramadan and continue it onwards.
Usually, you know, the point that you made before is so true, because like during the rest of the year, everyone's so indulged in, you know, different things. You know, it might be positioning, you know, you're in your job, you know, an increase in that role or whatever. But this month, everyone has a set goal, a same goal, and you can feel it, like you said. And I think that's what makes it easier, when everyone's striving to do good.
Definitely. And that's what we want to sort of create every day in our homes. But Ramadan makes it that little bit easier for us, doesn't it? And Ramadan is also known as the month of the Quran, because the Quran was revealed in this month. And you know, I mean, a lot of people, they emphasize, you know, on reciting the Quran a lot and abundantly. And we can see why as well, because the Prophet ﷺ would recite the entire Quran to Jibreel alayhi salam himself, you know, every Ramadan. So we can understand why there's the emphasis, and why, you know, many people, they practice on reciting a full Quran in Ramadan. And just generally, you know, connecting with the Quran is so important for us. I mean, firstly, because it's the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah, definitely.
There's nothing more beautiful in this dunya than the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, connecting with that. Okay, and then the greatness of it, I mean, you know, the person who reads it, the blessings for them increase. Not only that, it brings about ease to the heart, you know, it brings a source of relief for us, doors open for that individual. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says himself that verily in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find peace. And there's no greater feeling than feeling peace and tranquility in your heart.
It does, subhanAllah. You know, like how you said about feeling that peace. It's amazing when you see okay, everyone knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created everything. You know, everything has a purpose, everything has life, right? But you know, if you see the Quran Pak as, you know, each and every letter has an emotion. It has a feeling, subhanAllah. Wow. They speak to themselves. You know, like how we have discussions, those letters speak to themselves.
Oh, wow.
Subhanallah.
You just made everything come alive in front of you.
And then, you know, when a Quran Pak, when a Quran Pak is sitting on its shelf, it speaks, it expresses itself. When is that person going to come and hold me? When is it going to turn my pages? When is it going to connect to my letters? Subhanallah. So when you see it like that, it's not just a book. Okay, everyone knows it's just a book, but when you see it as those letters, know that you're looking at them, you know, they feel that connection in your heart, subhanallah. So it's like, you know, like, okay, everyone knows. You know, as a child, I've always heard and I've been taught that, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the trees, everything that's alive, it does zikr. But when you see it as an object, you see Quran Pak as an object, right? And you see that the pages are just pages, but they're not just pages, you know. And it's like, you know, we know that every position or every place that you do sajda, right? That sajda, that spot is going to bear witness to you, right? On the Day of Judgment, it's going to bear witness that, Ya Rabbi, this person did sajda on me. So, you know, if we think deeper within, you know, ourselves, and we think that the Quran Pak has a soul, subhanallah, you know what I mean? And then when you open the Quran Park and you read it, you see it in a different light.
Well, of course it has life because these are the words of God.
God, yeah. But you know,
and it brings light.
It is, but you know,
us.
the thing is, to be honest, only recently this opened up in my heart that like the Quran Park, everyone knows, is just not a book, obviously, but it's not. It's something more. I didn't ever think that the letters speak to themselves. They have emotions. They have feelings.
Well, the best example to give for that is, you know, the Prophet ﷺ has already told us that, you know, the Quran will intercede for its reader on the day of Qiyamah. So that itself proves what you're trying to say, you know, about the life, like it being alive. So on that day, we all know where no mother will even recognize her child. No father will recognize his son. No one will be, you know, interested in one another because out of fear. But yet that Quran, if you view it in the way you are saying, you view it, not just see it as an object, but connect with it, create a relationship with it, a beautiful relationship with it. And on the day of Qiyamah, it will intercede for you. It will come forward for you. It will be the light for you. So, you know, it's so important to create that relationship with the Quran, you know, opening it, reading it, you know, and inshallah, this month is that month where, you know, we can achieve that. And there's a lot of motivation around that. And like I mentioned before, everybody is very willing in this month to do a lot more. So we have that encouragement around us. And going back to what I mentioned before about reciting the whole of Quran, if there is anybody that feels like, you know what, this month, you know, I want to read a full Quran, one of the ways in which you can read the full Quran is if you read approximately, say, 4.5 pages after every salah. You know, this is a good practical tip, you know, in how to complete a Quran. And you know what, if for whatever reason, due to your lifestyle or commitments, for whatever reason you feel, you know what, I can't read a full Quran, you know, don't get demotivated, because we still want to keep that connection going with the Quran. You know, spend about 5-10 minutes a day, you know, and that's nothing, 5-10 minutes of the day. So spend about 5-10 minutes a day, read a passage or read a tafsir of the Quran, or read one of the stories from the Quran. These are all ways in which we can connect with the Quran and bring it into our lives and learn.
Definitely. I was just going to say, I think, to be honest, my personal goal is that, you know, like just pick a few surahs and go straight into the tafsir. Dwell so deep into it that you have that love, and it'll carry you on for the rest of your life. Because yes, it's good to read the Quran Park, but you know, actually focusing on certain points. Like, for example, starting with Surah Baqarah is such a huge surah, and there's so many lessons in there. But then, you know, to me personally, I always think, you know, if somebody was to come to me and say, so give me the treasures of Surah Baqarah, I wouldn't know. You know, you'd give those certain, you know, like the main popular ones, but not the really deep stuff. So really delve into it. And I think it's something, you read the Quran Park because you want it to motivate yourself. You want it to change who you are. Not just, oh yes, I've accomplished it, I've read it all now.
Well, when you're speaking about that, you know, it's like when you meet a friend or you meet anybody, how do you create a relationship with them? First, you have to get to know them, don't you? So you study them, don't you? You see what they like, they dislike, you study them, and then you can create a relationship. Well, it's the same thing with the Quran. First, you have to open it. After that, definitely. You have to study it. So study the tafsir, either study, you know, an Arabic course, or study with the madrasa, or generally, if you're reading the Quran, have a good Quran translation, read that, and study it the way you would study a friend, right? And then you will create a relationship once you understand it. And then you'll be more inclined to read it.
Definitely. You know, you just reminded me of a friend I used to have when I was younger. And, you know, a lot of people, they find drawing closer to your deen, just that first step, quite hard. You know, they're thinking, oh, you know, if I take that step, it might be too much for me, or I'm not worthy of that step, or however. But you made such a good point. Even just holding the Quran Park, to your heart, and doing dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make this journey easy for me. You know, you're opening it, and yes, okay, you might not have that first connection, but only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows your struggle. You know, opening it and feeling that, you know, this is a book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just having that feeling, that's it. Before you even begin reading anything.
It's true.
And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens up your heart, and then the amount of du'as that pour out of your heart, only Allah knows.
Definitely. I mean, should never underestimate the power of the Quran, to the point where, you know, we want to guide people through obviously Ramadan. And like I mentioned, if you're not able to read a full Quran, okay, then we've mentioned about looking through tafsir, connecting with stories, you know, trying to find that time to reflect yourself, your life upon the tafsir of the Quran. So like, the translation, the stories and things like this. And then, if worse comes to worse and you feel, I can't seem to fit this into my schedule, you know what, at least listen to the Quran, play the Quran and listen to it attentively. And I think this is sometimes really underestimated, the power of listening to the Quran. I'll give you an example, and this is actually a really long story, and it's such an interesting story, so it's one to really look up, but I'll keep it brief. Hazrat Umar, Allah be pleased with him, was a companion of the Prophet ﷺ. But before he became a companion of the Prophet ﷺ, obviously he was a non-believer. Okay, and this is in the early days of Islam, when it was being practiced in secret. And what happened was, he was on his way to actually kill the Prophet ﷺ. At that time, obviously, he didn't embrace Islam and he was against it. And so he was on his way to kill the Prophet ﷺ. That's the hate that he had at that point before he became a Muslim. And he met somebody along the way, and they could see that he was enraged, he was anger, he was going to go kill the Prophet ﷺ. So they said to him, why don't you go look at the affairs in your own house? To which he was like, what do you mean the affairs in my own house? And he said, well, your sister and your brother-in-law, they've embraced Islam. Okay, then he took a full detour, went back, right, I'm going to find that sister, right? When looking for the sister, when you approached the sister's house, you could hear recitation of the Quran, or you could say like humming, humming when you read.
In a beautiful melody.
Yeah. And then obviously when they knew obviously somebody has come, so they quickly stopped reciting. And then that's when Hazrat Umar, Allah be pleased with them, asked, well, what was that you're reciting? And he started questioning them. And then when they said that, look, we have become Muslims, we believe in Allah and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he then started to beat him, started wrestling with his brother-in-law, fighting to the point where he even hit his sister and she was bleeding. And that's when she stood up and she said that we have embraced Islam and we believe in Allah and we believe in the Prophet ﷺ as a final messenger. And the way she stood up and she was so courageous, and when he seen the blood pouring from her, that's when he looked and he said, okay, you know what, recite to me then, read to me what you was reading, right? And that's when they then recited the Quran. And when they recited the Quran, and remember, this was the same individual, the same person that was on the way to kill the Prophet ﷺ, who was a non-believer. The recitation affected the heart of Hazrat Umar so much, Allah be pleased with him, right? That tears flew from his eyes. Yeah. And then after that, when he left, he went on his way to go embrace Islam. He went to go see the Prophet ﷺ to embrace Islam. So I'm saying this listening of recitation took one person from kufr, so being a non-believer, into a believer. Don't underestimate the effect that it has on you.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I know there's always this thing where some people will be like, oh, I finished one Quran, I finished 2 Qurans, and then there'll be someone be like, oh, well, I've really struggled with it. Firstly, anybody who does struggle with reciting the Quran, right, genuinely with recitation, remember there's double reward for you.
Yeah, that's what I was just
there's
gonna
double
say,
reward for you.
like...
Okay. And you know what? It's not a competition. What it is it's about building your connection with the Quran, building that relationship. Relationship does take time, but it's about building it, and this is the best month to build it in.
And I think, sorry, just before you go on, that I think personally, don't even discuss it with somebody else. Like just generally, some people, it's not a form of, I don't know, obviously only Allah knows your intentions, but like, don't even say to somebody, oh, I've read this much. I think you don't know the other person's struggle.
That's true, but I think if you say out of motivation,
yeah.
Like if I say to you, Zeba, come on, you can do this.
Yeah,
I think it's how you say it as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
and
true.
how you make the person feel.
Yeah, true.
So then, when it comes to even the Quran and building a relationship with the Quran, our Prophet ﷺ told us such a beautiful method in how to make this relationship, that when he sallallahu alaihi wasallam would recite, a verse of mercy, right, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam would stop and make dua there. And when he sallallahu alaihi wasallam would read a verse about punishment, he would stop there and ask for forgiveness.
Subhanallah.
Yeah, how nice is that? How nice is that in the way to like connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Yeah.
So Quran is a massive part, but you know what? Charity is also a really big part of Ramadan.
Yeah, that's
You'll
true.
notice, mashallah, I'll say, people become very charitable in this month.
Stomachs are empty, my friend, that's why.
Yeah. So before we continue with our podcast, we just wanted to introduce you to the Ramadan journal created by Almarkaz Islami. This is a brilliant journal to document your day-to-day of Ramadan. So in here you can write your goals, you can You can document your salahs. It also has a tasbihat tracker. So if you feel like, okay, in the morning I'm going to read this many tasbihat, you can write it down and make sure that you actually do implement that.
It has a section here for Laylatul Qadr, and so you can put all your notes down, everything in there. And lastly, it has rulings on fasting, and basically, certain questions that you might find difficult. And so all the information to purchase this item is in the description box, and there's also a PDF version of this.
So the money raised towards the Ramadan Journal will go towards the new masjid and education facilities that are currently being constructed at the moment at the site. So the facilities will consist of the state-of-the-art women's only gym, a library and a bookshop, a lecture theatre, classrooms, meeting rooms, a funeral and bereavement services, and much more.
So don't forget to purchase, and we'll continue with our podcast.
But people become very charitable, and I think this should be mentioned. Masha, the Ummah is very good at this, in the giving charity. And maybe I think could be two reasons. One of those is the fact that, we do feel hunger, we feel thirst, we get the headaches, and then we begin to contemplate and think, do you know what? Is this what it feels like not to have food or not to have the luxuries that we have? And then we begin to reflect because we experience something. Or the other reason is what motivates us, I think, is the fact that we know that the rewards are multiplied in this month. And our Prophet ﷺ motivates us. He says to us that, look, the best charity is given in Ramadan. The best charity is given in Ramadan. And the Prophet ﷺ, he himself would increase his charity in this month.
Ramadan, subhanallah.
I think that's just motivation there.
That's true. And I think, like you said before, when you see other people giving, you give.
Yeah.
So
someday, you see someone doing a good action, then it usually helps you to perform the good action as well, can motivate you. And generally, we're quite good at copying anyway, aren't we?
Yeah.
Hopefully, the good stuff, yeah. And one thing I did want to mention actually about charity as well is that everyone's financial situation is different, right? So if you're somebody you feel like, I'm not working or I'm not earning, don't think that you can't participate in giving charity. You can also reap the rewards. There's so many different ways. For example, firstly, getting your children involved as well is very important. So doing things like baking things at home and then selling them to your family members, sell them to your neighbors. People are very charitable in this month, knowing that it's going to go to charity. They will give openly to you. So bake something, make something, sell it. If you have something at home that is in a good condition that you can sell it, use that money so you don't physically have to be working and earning to give. You can give from whatever you have at home, even to the point where if you don't have nothing, you can give your time to certain events.
That's what I was just going to say. If you feel like there's a bit of a financial strain there, then just actually contacting whoever and saying, you know what, can I help you? Get voluntary help. Just a person to be, to
so if there's like a charity event going on, you can stand on the stall for free and the money they make, towards charity, you get the reward of that as well. So, everyone can participate, in giving to charity. And one of the other things I think we need to be really mindful of is our speech when we're fasting.
Yeah, oh God.
Yeah. So to be honest, I think speech in Ramadan is usually quite good because we're so hungry, we don't have the energy to speak.
I was gonna say, definitely.
So I think in that way it has a positive effect on us. But other times it doesn't always, because what's happened is we've got so used to creating a habit on our tongue of getting involved with the wrong type of speech. So whether that's like speaking ill of others or gossiping or tale carrying, we've given a taste to our tongue now of this, where it becomes difficult. Even when we say shaitan is locked up, we've let these habits run on our tongues for so long that it just becomes a habit that we're not even conscious that we're fasting and we should refrain from certain things. So we have like 3 gateways, you can say, and you know what, we want to control them and we want to try and keep them closed. Okay, so one of the gateways is our eyes. Okay, and what we're guilty of with our eyes is we impurify our eyes. And how we do that is, for example, we'll be sat on our phone scrolling TikTok, Instagram, anything and everything is coming up, nothing of benefit, but our eyes are entertained, looking, and hours can go by like that, right? But then if we've entertained our eyes with all of these things which don't have benefit for us, how are these same eyes going to fall in love with looking at the Quranic ayats?
That's so true.
And looking at the Quran and it's just going to look like black and white to us. We're going to be bored of it straight away. We're not going to connect with it.
I've never thought of it like that, to be honest.
So in order for us to connect, we have to move away from this. We need to tone down the social media. We need to tone down the amount of time we spend on TV. We need to tone down of what we're looking at with our eyes, and as much as possible, especially in this month, knowing that the rewards are multiplied. Okay, and this is something that will take time, but the main thing is we start, and this is a good month to start in. And then we have our ears, which is another gateway. So we want to abstain from listening to the wrong things. One of those, and I'll give you a day-to-day example, is just like when you're talking to a friend on the phone, talking, and the talk is of no benefit. It's just anything and everything.
And have you realized, that if you sometimes you don't feel right saying to the other person, even if it's the best of friends, why is it that we don't feel right to say, okay, what's istighfar, forget it now, we'll talk about something else? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but
that feeling does come, but then we throw it to a side ourselves. Istighfar.
But we need to find the courage to either say it in a polite manner, or we need to understand that maybe this friend isn't good for us. Okay, because that friend is wasting your time, and that friend is not benefiting you or taking you to where you need to be, your ultimate destination. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to be mindful of what we're listening to. And what happens is when we're just listening to nonsense or we're listening to the wrong things, we are building up filth in our ears. So then how are these same ears are going to enjoy recitation of the Quran, listening to it? How are these ears going to enjoy listening to the zikr of Allah if we've impurified them for so long? So now in this month of Ramadan, we want to focus on moving away from that. We want to focus more on enjoying good things, good talks. We want to train ourselves. That's what we want to do. So we want to train ourselves at looking at good things. We want to train ourselves in listening to good things, whether it be good speeches, whether it be to zikr, listening to the Quran. We want to purify these ears. And lastly, the tongue. Now we have already done a podcast, obviously, about the tongue in quite a lot of detail and about speech. So I'm only going to touch on this. But what we've done is, as I mentioned at the beginning, we've blackened our tongue so much, and that we've lost the ability to taste, you can say, the spiritual sweetness of the tongue. And what I mean by that is, have you ever felt like where you see somebody and they're so in love with their zikr, or they're so in love with the way they're reciting the Durood Sharif, and you look, you think, wow, they're so like even like Mufti Saab, or someone really righteous, you see them, they're reciting, and they just, I don't know how to explain it, but
no, I know exactly what you mean.
You see something coming off
and
them,
you're
and
yearning
you feel
for that.
it.
You're
And
yearning
you
for that.
think, wow, like they're so engrossed into it. And then you see us, and we have to read the Durood Sharif, and it feels so heavy on the tongue, and it doesn't feel like we can concentrate. Why is that? Because we have allowed our tongues to get so used to tasting the foulness of our sins, to the point where now when we want to recite the Durood Sharif, when we want to recite good, our tongue's not accustomed to that taste, that spiritual sweetness,
or we get
and
so
it becomes
distracted.
difficult.
Or you get distracted and thinking, hey, did I complete that Durood Sharif? Istighfar. To that point, istighfar.
So
you're so right.
This is what we've done, but the whole purpose of speaking about it is not to make anyone feel more down about themselves, because we've all been in this boat, and we are guilty of this. What we want to do is we now want to start to feel that spiritual sweetness. And how do we do it? Increasing our recitations. This is the month to do it, and that's what I'm trying to say. This is the month to really elevate ourselves.
You mentioned about the tongue and basically the gateways to retrieving that, or kind of controlling your tongue, right? I want to speak to you about discuss the building bridges, like people who relationships that you've kind of left, or there's issues with between you and somebody else. I think this month is a time of reflection. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so merciful, and the only way to receive Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy is if you're merciful to others, no matter whose fault it was, like whatever it is. Sometimes obviously nobody ever says that it's mine or
That's
it's
true.
yours, right?
Yeah.
And there's a hadith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rasulullah says that the person who brings upon a relationship, like as in brings two people together, there's a place in Jannah for them, subhanallah.
Mashallah.
So I think we need to kind of stand on our ego, and we're really easy. We find it quite easy to do all these voluntary acts, to do charity, to go out and give these leaflets,
You're right.
stand in the
You're right.
rain and talk
You're
about
right.
Islam and stuff,
You're
right?
right.
But
You're
when somebody gives us advice that, you know, that so and so, your brother or sister
Yeah.
or any friend or whoever it is, you're not speaking to them. I think personally that's such a huge thing. Just to go and you be the first, you know, to say, you know, let's make amends now. And then that satisfaction Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts in your heart is something else, subhanAllah.
And if you know two people are in that situation, then be the third person that does put them together.
Definitely. Yeah. And I am speaking of my, like, a personal thing now, that, you know, there's been situations where just to bring two people together, I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but I had white lies, you know, like just say good things about each other. You
In
know,
the right way.
Yeah.
Is jais in
So and so was saying about you,
relationship,
you know what I mean? And then say the same thing to the other person. And then when they think or feel good between themselves, they'll bring each other together.
And when they bring each other together, then they can have a really nice iftari, and then that brings us on to the next point, which is nutrition. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, when it comes to Ramadan, you know, we all become trained in nutrition, don't we? But I don't know if it's the right way or the wrong way. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, what's really interesting is, you know, when you ask somebody that, oh, have you prepared for Ramadan, and are you ready? Are you set? You know, and you'll often find people will say, yeah, I've made all my samosas, rolls. I just need the ru'i afza. We're set, we're ready to go.
Already frozen.
Yeah, and we're so like focused on our stomachs, and we put so much emphasis on preparation of Ramadan on our stomachs that we actually forget the real preparation, which is the preparation of what you know, months beforehand, or at least minimum weeks beforehand, you know, we should be worrying about, you know, sort of connecting with the Quran again, you know, trying to increase nafal ibadat or even performing nafal ibadat, trying to wake up at night, you know, trying to do some good practices that will make it easier for us when we enter Ramadan. And I know whoever's listening to this will think, this girl, she's got a serious problem with samosas. Maybe I had a really burnt one, that's why once it's put me off for life. No, I'm joking.
But you're so right, because then it's like, even for nutrition, you need that prep, you know, like before Ramadan, to engage your body that, you know, this is coming. It's like a whole month of fast is coming.
Yeah.
So stop down on your fast foods and everything else.
No, you're right. I mean, and there's nothing wrong, by the way, with preparing in a good way, nutritional meals. This is this is the point that I want to make. You know, what we eat does affect us, not just physically, but affects us spiritually. I mean, if I give like just a Western example of when there was a study that was shown where when somebody eats chocolate and how the chocolate affects them and how it releases a chemical and then they feel happy. Yeah, and that's shown to affect their mood. How do you think when we're fasting and the food that we eat, how is it going to affect us? Of course, it does have a physical impact and it has a spiritual impact. So what we want to do is we want to nourish our bodies with the right foods, not with the wrong foods. If we're going to sit there eating fried foods when we've opened our fast, or even in the morning, fried foods are going on, donuts are going on, you know, the
oily
effect,
parathe.
Oily parathe, which everybody loves, but we really do need to control. You know, we're going to feel bloated, we're going to feel lethargic, we're going to feel lazy. These foods have this impact on us. And then what happens is a rolling stone effect. We're not going to want to get up to even read our fard namaz, forget Tarawih alone, right? And we don't want to fall into that because we want to reap the rewards of this month. And then we have the opposite side, is that nourish yourself with good foods. If you're making foods which say are grilled, which are healthy, which are low in fat, which are got your proteins, it's got your fats, you know, you got your salads in there, you're nourishing your body with what it needs after a long fast, or even in the morning, you know what, you'll be in a better mood, you'll have energy, your stomach will feel light, you won't be getting headaches, dizziness, and you'll have the energy to do ibadat. And at the same time, if you're that sister or that mother or even a father, if you're preparing these meals, try and prepare the meals which are nourishing. And inshallah, if you make the intention that I'm preparing these meals so that they nourish these fasting people, not only will you get the reward of the fasting person, but you will also, without them losing the reward as well. So you get the reward of the fasting person, but you also will gain another reward of all the ibadat that they do, because you made the intention of making good food for them, nourishing food, healthy food, so that they can perform ibadat.
I think, you know, like, that's an excellent point you made, because like for mothers, they've got so much overheads. They've got the husband, they've got children, they've got the family, house chores, mothers are working as well. So just even if they're not able to make, like to do zikr as they wish they would, as they wish they could as a single person, right? But just having that intention. Yeah.
And you know what? I put my hands together and I say, please, to the brothers, or even, I don't know, maybe some sisters, if the fathers are cooking, please, whoever is cooking, please, for the iftaris, please don't overburden them.
Definitely.
Please keep it easy for them, keep it light for them. Remember, they're in the same situation as you. They are fasting also. Help them with whatever they're doing. Make it easy for them. You'll also enjoy in the reward. Don't overburden them, because, I've come across, unfortunately, some people where some mothers, they've gone all out and they've wanted to please everyone, and they've done so much cooking to the point where, when it comes to iftari, they can barely eat and they're so tired. Definitely. And they can't involve themselves in any good ibadat, like they can't take advantage of the Taraweeh namaz. We all need to help each other in this month.
I was just going to say, I think it's a family effort. If we kind of boost each other up and keep saying that, we don't need these these oily food and whatever else.
What's on your mind.
Oily stuff or however. That's kind of motivating each other. Because if there's only one person striving, then unfortunately it's going to be a sinking
difficult.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say that, like you said about the healthy, options and stuff like that, it has a huge effect on your full performance of zikr. And it's like, I think it's a everyday battle. The first couple of fasts are, we indulge in all the fried stuff and stuff. And then we think, oh, you know what, tomorrow we're not going to have any of that. That tomorrow, that goal needs to stay strong.
Yeah, and then your neighbor ends up sending you a plate.
Yeah. Well, I think personally, this is my target, and I was saying this, that if our neighbor does send us a plate, we forward it on to the next neighbor. Or maybe take a few. I think that's, like, no just comment. share the burden.
Share the burden, that's all right. And another thing I want to mention as well is that, when it's iftari time and we're eating, our Prophet ﷺ, gives the best of advice, and he advises, to only eat a few morsels of food and to keep the spine straight. Which means what we do is we tend to eat and eat and eat to the point where we're like this. We're bent down and our spine is no longer straight because we can't hold the food. And you don't want to end up being like that meme that goes on everywhere where there's that guy and he's like eating so much and he's flat out, because he's eaten so much. That's not our goal. We want to eat so we've got space in our stomach, we've got energy. That's the whole purpose of eating.
Exactly.
So we've got energy for ibadat. And then, Allah Ta'ala also tells us in the Quran as well, just a few morsels of food is enough. If you try it, if you open your fast and have a few morsels and read your Maghrib and come back, you'll be surprised.
Yeah, exactly. Feeling a lot more fresh.
A lot more fresh, and you'll realize, actually, I was looking at all that food, but I don't need to overindulge in it. And then even with we should maximize our mornings as well. So, when it comes to eating at suhoor time is so important, because eating at that time, gives us strength for the worship for the rest of the day. And what happens is, if we become hungry and we don't eat proper food, we become irritable, we become angry, we become lazy because we're hungry. And then what happens is we get irritated, and then it can lead to sins on our tongues, or even with our thoughts, actions, So this is how important it is to eat at this time, so we've got the energy to do good. And if we do eat at this time, you'll be surprised, you'll be in a happy mood, your spirits will be lifted, you'll be more motivated to do good because you're full. And the other advantage as well of waking up in the morning is the fact that you can do extra ibadat, so you can get involved with the tahajjud salah. At that time your du'as are getting accepted as well. And
you're free from basically the busyness of children, husband, everything.
Yeah, that is true. You can't actually fully focus. No, you're right. And the Prophet ﷺ told us as well, the best of advice, to eat at suhoor, okay? Because it's a meal of blessings, and don't leave it, even if it's just a gulp of water. And Allah sends His mercy and angels to ask for forgiveness for those who take suhoor. So you eating, the angels will ask for forgiveness for you. And you're eating, Allah Ta'ala will shower His mercy upon you. So why would you deprive yourself of that?
Exactly.
And the Prophet ﷺ also, he did make dua that to bless his ummah in the morning time. So waking up in the morning is full of blessings. And I think I just wanted to touch on zikr. You know, we mentioned a lot about Quran, and we know Taraweeh, Salah, you know, not everyone's lifestyle or health situation is the same, but keeping the zikr of Allah continuously going on our tongue. So as well as connecting through reading Taraweeh namaz, reading Salah, you know, making sure that we increase our tasbih after Salah, or if we're driving, you know, reading tasbih. I know some people, they even get, you know, like the clicker tasbih, and they sellotape it around the wheel, and while they're driving, you know, they click it. You know, that's called devotion and dedication. That so, you know, including the tasbih, trying to keep it on you in your pocket, reading it when you're walking towards the school, when you're walking towards work, when you're sat in the car, recite as much as you can. And even saying things like simple tasbih, like La ilaha illallah, you know, the hellfire is forbidden for the one who says it sincerely. Just that small. Yeah. And even like subhanallah, you know, reciting that 100 times, you know, it doesn't take long to recite it 100 times. Okay, just one word, you know, it removes 1,000 sins, and it has good deeds written for you. And we know at the same time in Ramadan, you know, everything is tripled, the reward. And reciting astaghfirullah, if you say this in the beginning of the day and you pass away before the evening, or if you recite this astaghfirullah in the evening and you die before the morning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make you amongst those who are in paradise. One word can take you to paradise. This, don't underestimate the tasbih as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's so many mothers out there, even fathers, whoever it may be, you know, young sisters, brothers. They might have so much in their lives that they're not able to read the Quran Park or, you know, extra nafals. However, they just about maybe do the fard, 5 fard namazes. So I'm glad you mentioned that zikr is a huge thing. You can do it wherever you are, whenever you are.
Exactly.
Because your tongue is always bark, it's always pure.
And this is one of the ways you keep purifying our tongue, our heart, is through recitation, and it keeps us focused all the time. And it keeps us away from getting involved in the wrong discussions and listening to the wrong discussions. And even reading the Durood Sharif, you know, reading the Durood Sharif, just 10 you know, reading it, you know, 10 good deeds are written for you, and 10 sins are raised for you, and your status is also elevated by 10 ranks.
Subhanallah.
You know, very, very simple zikr, but yet so effective, and so the reward is immense.
So this brings us to the end of our podcast about our ultimate guide to Ramadan. We hope that you've benefited from the tips that we've spoken about, and but I personally want to implement all these tips to myself, inshallah, in this Ramadan. So I hope that inshallah we all have a different Ramadan, a more spiritual, stronger Ramadan than we've ever had before.
Inshallah. And I hope that you will remember us in your du'as. Please pray for us also, and our families. And Ramadan Mubarak to yourselves and all of your family.
Assalamu alaikum.